The morning rush at Brew and Dreams Cafe was in full swing when the front door exploded open with such force that the little bell above it flew clean off its hook and landed in Mrs. Henderson's latte. "Excuse me! Excuse me! Coming through!" Brad Wellington burst through the crowded cafe like a human tornado in a $5,000 Italian suit, phone pressed to his ear, briefcase swinging dangerously close to innocent bystanders' heads. His perfectly styled dark hair was disheveled, his usually immaculate tie was askew, and his piercing blue eyes held the wild look of a man who just realized he was about to lose the biggest deal of his life. "No, no, no!" he screamed into his phone, causing a barista to drop a tray of croissants. "The Tokyo investors are not pulling out. I don't care if it's 2 a.m. there, wake them up, buy them a pony, I don't care." Behind the counter, Lisa Morgan watched this chaos unfold with the expression of someone who'd seen this exact type of entitled businessman drama one too many times. Her golden blonde hair was pulled back in a messy bun secured with what appeared to be a wooden coffee stirrer. Flour dusted her vintage band t-shirt, and her bright green eyes held a dangerous glint that regular customers knew meant trouble. "Sir," she called out in a voice sweet as honey but sharp as a blade. "There's a line." Brad spun around, finally noticing the 20-something people he'd just bulldozed past. "What?" "Oh, right. Move, all of you, move, this is an emergency." The cafe erupted in outraged murmurs. Lisa's grip tightened on the espresso machine's steam wand like it was a weapon. "An emergency?" Lisa's voice could have frozen hell over. "What kind of emergency? Someone dying? Hospital? Fire?" "Worse." Brad threw his hands up dramatically. "My assistant quit. She was supposed to bring me my morning coffee and now I'm..." He checked his Rolex. 7 minutes behind schedule. Do you understand what 7 minutes means in the business world? The entire cafe fell silent. Even the espresso machine seemed to stop hissing in shock. Lisa slowly placed both hands on the counter, leaning forward with the predatory grace of a lioness about to pounce. "Let me get this straight. You just terrorized 20 innocent people having their morning coffee because your assistant quit and you're 7 minutes late for your precious business meeting?" "Yes, finally, someone who gets it." Brad snapped his fingers at her. "Large coffee, black, extra shot, and make it snappy, I'll tip you well." "Tip me well?" Lisa's voice went up an octave. "Tip me well?" "Yes, like $20 or something." "That's good for you people, right?" The collective gasp from the cafe customers was audible. Someone whispered, "Oh no, he didn't." Lisa's face went through several colors before settling on a dangerous shade of red. "You people?" "You people?" "You know, service industry workers," Brad said, completely oblivious to the fact that he'd just sealed his doom. "Now about that coffee." "Here's your coffee." Lisa grabbed the nearest coffee pot, which happened to be filled with yesterday's cold, bitter brew, and hurled the entire contents directly at Brad's chest. The cafe erupted in cheers and applause as Brad stood there, dripping and stunned, his expensive suit now sporting a large brown stain that looked remarkably like a map of Texas. "What the hell?" he sputtered. "That's what you get for being a condescending, arrogant, entitled piece of... I'm calling the police. Go ahead." Lisa vaulted over the counter in one fluid motion, landing directly in front of him. "Tell them how you assaulted 20 customers with your ego." Brad blinked, suddenly noticing that Lisa was... well, she was absolutely gorgeous when she was furious. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes were blazing, and there was something about the way she stood her ground that made his brain short-circuit. You can't just throw coffee at customers," he stammered. "Watch me throw something else." Lisa grabbed a blueberry muffin from the display case. Wait. Brad threw his hands up in surrender. I'm sorry, don't throw the muffin." "Why not?" Lisa demanded, muffin cocked and ready to fire. "Give me one good reason." "Because..." Brad's brain struggled to form words while staring at this blonde tornado of fury. Because I'm having the worst day of my life and I just took it out on innocent people and you're absolutely right and I'm a complete asshole?" Lisa paused, muffin still raised. "Go on." "I haven't slept in 2 days. I've had 12 cups of coffee. My biggest client is threatening to walk. My assistant quit via text message at 6 a.m. and he looked down at his ruined suit. This was my lucky suit. Lucky suit? Lisa's voice was still dangerous but curious. I've worn it to every major business meeting for 5 years. Never lost a deal in this suit. He looked genuinely devastated. My grandmother bought it for me when I graduated business school. She said it would bring me success. Something in his voice made Lisa lower the muffin slightly. Your grandmother? She passed away last month, Brad said quietly. Left me her cafe. She left you a cafe? Lisa's voice was softer now. Yeah, this little place in Brooklyn. I've been trying to figure out what to do with it. He looked around Lisa's cafe. It looks a lot like this one, actually. Lisa set the muffin down completely. You inherited a cafe and you've never even learned how to order coffee properly? Brad gave a weak laugh. I've never even made coffee. I've had assistants and secretaries and I don't know how to do anything normal people do. Normal people? Lisa raised an eyebrow. I mean, people who aren't... He gestured vaguely at himself. Whatever I am. A disaster? Lisa suggested. A disaster, Brad agreed. A complete, coffee-stained disaster. For a moment, they just stared at each other. The cafe was dead silent, everyone watching like they were witnessing the world's most caffeinated soap opera. You know what the worst part is? Brad continued, apparently on a roll now. I actually came in here because I've been walking past this place for months, and every time I do, I smell something that reminds me of my grandmother's kitchen. And I thought maybe if I came in here, I might remember what it felt like to be normal. Lisa felt something crack inside her chest. What did your grandmother's kitchen smell like? Cinnamon, Brad said immediately. And vanilla. And love, I guess. Stupid, right? Lisa looked at him for a long moment, this dripping, vulnerable man who'd just admitted he was trying to remember what love smelled like. Then she turned to the display case and pulled out a fresh cinnamon roll. Here, she said, holding it out to him. I can't. Yes, you can. It's my grandmother's recipe. She smiled for the first time. She always said cinnamon rolls could fix anything except a broken heart, and even then, they helped. Brad took the roll, their fingers brushing for a moment. I'm Brad, he said quietly. Lisa, she replied, and you're still an arrogant asshole. I know, Brad said, taking a bite of the cinnamon roll. His eyes closed involuntarily. Oh my God. Good? This tastes like... He opened his eyes and Lisa saw they were slightly glassy. Like home. Your grandmother would be proud, Lisa said softly. She'd probably be horrified that I just got coffee thrown at me. Brad laughed, and it was the first genuine laugh Lisa had heard from him. She'd probably be proud that you finally met someone who wouldn't put up with your bullshit, Lisa countered. Probably, Brad agreed. Lisa? Yeah? Thank you. For the coffee shower. I apparently needed it. Lisa grinned. You're welcome, but you're still paying for everyone's coffee this morning. Deal, Brad said immediately. And, would you maybe teach me how to make coffee for my grandmother's cafe? Lisa studied his face, seeing something genuine there for the first time. That depends. On what? On whether you can handle being taught by one of you people. Brad winced. I deserved that. You deserved worse. I know. He looked at her hopefully. So, will you teach me? Lisa pretended to think about it, fighting a smile. I suppose I could try, but I warn you, I'm a tough teacher. I can handle tough, Brad said. We'll see about that, Lisa replied, and for the first time in months she found herself looking forward to tomorrow. 3 days later, Brad Wellington stood outside Brew and Dreams Cafe wearing jeans, actual jeans, and a t-shirt that still had the store tags attached. His hair was less perfectly styled, and he clutched a notebook like a lifeline. Okay, Brad, he muttered to himself. You've negotiated billion-dollar deals. You can learn to make coffee. It's just beans and water. How hard can it be? He pushed open the door and the morning rush crowd turned to stare. Word had spread about the coffee throwing incident, and Brad had become something of a local celebrity. "Well, well," Lisa called from behind the counter, grinning. "Look who's back, and dressed like a human being this time." "I bought normal people clothes," Brad announced proudly, then frowned, though the salesperson kept asking if I was going to a costume party. Lisa snorted. "That's because you're wearing a $200 distressed t-shirt that's supposed to look cheap." $200 is cheap, Brad said automatically, then caught himself. "I mean, it's not cheap. Nothing is cheap. Money is... I'm still learning." "Uh-huh." Lisa wiped down the espresso machine. "Ready for Coffee 101, hotshot?" "I brought supplies." Brad opened his briefcase, because of course he still carried a briefcase, and pulled out the notebook. 3 different pens, a highlighter, and what appeared to be a small recording device. "Are you planning to study coffee or infiltrate the CIA?" Lisa asked. "I'm a thorough learner," Brad said defensively. "I took notes on my way here. Did you know coffee beans are actually seeds? And that espresso isn't a type of bean but a brewing method? And that..." "Brad." "Yes?" "Shut up and put on this apron." Lisa tossed him a bright pink apron with "Kiss the Cook" embroidered on it. Brad held it up like it might bite him. "This is very pink. It's the only clean one left? Unless you want the one that says Buns of Steel with a picture of hamburger buns." Brad quickly tied on the pink apron. "Pink is fine. Pink is manly." "Sure it is, Cupcake. Now, first lesson, making a simple drip coffee." Lisa moved behind the counter and Brad followed like an eager puppy. She gestured to the large commercial coffee maker. "This is Big Bertha. She's temperamental, loud, and if you disrespect her, she'll burn you, kind of like me." "Noted," Brad said, scribbling in his notebook. "Step 1, grind the beans. But not too fine, not too coarse. It should feel like..." "Like what?" Lisa paused, realizing she'd never had to explain this before. Like coarse sand? Or maybe breadcrumbs?" "Coarse sand or breadcrumbs," Brad repeated, writing furiously. "Got it. Very specific. It's not about being specific. It's about feeling. Can you quantify the feeling?" Lisa stared at him. "Did you just ask me to quantify a feeling? I respond well to metrics and data points." "Oh my God." Lisa put her face in her hands. "You're going to be a nightmare to teach." "I'm a very good student. I graduated summa cum laude from Harvard Business School." "Yes, you mentioned that. 17 times, in the first 5 minutes." Brad deflated slightly. "I'm nervous. I've never been bad at anything before." Something in his voice made Lisa look up. There was genuine vulnerability there, mixed with frustration. "Hey," she said more gently. "Everyone's bad at things when they start. I burned my first 50 batches of coffee. Set off the fire alarm so many times the fire department knew me by name." "Really?" "Really. And I once accidentally made espresso so strong it kept Mrs. Henderson awake for 3 days straight. She still brings it up." Brad smiled for the first time that morning. "Okay, so, coarse sand feeling. Right, now grab the beans." Brad reached for the container with the determination of someone defusing a bomb. He measured exactly, ground carefully, and looked to Lisa for approval. "Perfect," she said, and Brad beamed like he'd just won the Nobel Prize. "Now, the water temperature, it should be 195 to 205 degrees Fahrenheit," Brad interrupted. "I researched it." "Of course you did. And how are you planning to measure that?" Brad pulled out a digital thermometer. "With this." Lisa blinked. "You brought a thermometer to make coffee. Precision is important. Brad, normal people don't carry thermometers to coffee shops." "I'm not normal people," Brad said matter-of-factly. "I'm trying to learn to be normal people." Lisa felt that weird, chest-fluttering thing again. "Okay, thermometer boy, show me your perfect temperature." Brad carefully measured the water, checked the temperature 3 times and poured it over the grounds with the concentration of a surgeon. They waited in silence as the coffee brewed. "It smells good," Lisa admitted. "It does," Brad agreed, looking proud. "This isn't so hard after all." Which was, of course, the exact moment everything went wrong. The coffee maker made a sound like a dying whale, spurted coffee everywhere, and began smoking. Brad panicked and started pressing random buttons, which only made things worse. Coffee sprayed across the counter, the floor, and both of them. "What did you do?" Lisa shouted over the mechanical screeching. "I don't know," Brad shouted back, covered in coffee and frantically pressing more buttons. "I followed the instructions. Stop pressing buttons." "Which buttons?" "All the buttons." Lisa dove past him and hit the emergency shutoff, and Big Bertha wheezed to a stop. The cafe was suddenly very quiet, except for the sound of coffee dripping from the ceiling. They stood there, both completely soaked, staring at the destruction. "So," Lisa said finally, "that went well." "I'm fired, aren't I?" Brad asked miserably. "Brad, you're not even hired. You're just a crazy person I'm teaching out of the goodness of my heart. A crazy person who just destroyed your coffee machine." Lisa looked at him, pink apron askew, hair dripping, notebook clutched protectively to his chest, and started laughing. Not just a chuckle, but a full-body, can't-breathe kind of laugh. "What's so funny?" Brad demanded. "You," Lisa gasped between laughs. "You brought a thermometer to make coffee and still managed to make Big Bertha explode." "It's not funny, I ruined everything." "Brad, look around, this is a coffee shop. Coffee disasters happen daily. See that stain on the ceiling? That's from when I tried to make a triple-shot cappuccino and forgot to put the portafilter in properly." Brad looked up at the brown stain she was pointing to. "That's actually kind of reassuring. The point is, you tried, and failing spectacularly is part of learning. I'm used to being good at things immediately." "Well, welcome to the real world where most things are hard and messy and require practice." Brad nodded slowly. "Can we try again tomorrow?" "Tomorrow? Brad, we haven't even cleaned up today's disaster yet." "I'll help clean. I'll stay as long as it takes." Lisa studied his face, seeing determination mixed with humility. "You know what? Fine. But next time, leave the thermometer at home." "Deal," Brad said immediately. "And Brad?" "Yeah? Nice apron." Brad looked down at his coffee-stained pink apron and, for the first time in his adult life, didn't care that he looked ridiculous. "Thanks," he said. "I'm starting to like pink." 1 week and 3 minor coffee disasters later, Brad stood nervously outside a small weathered cafe in Brooklyn, keys jingling in his hand. The faded sign read Maggie's Kitchen in cheerful yellow letters, though the paint was peeling, and one of the windows had a crack running through it. "So this is it," Lisa said, stepping out of Brad's Ferrari, which had been an adventure in itself. "Your grandmother's place." "Grandmother Maggie's place," Brad corrected softly. She always insisted everyone call her Grandmother Maggie, even strangers. Said it made the world feel smaller and friendlier. Sounds like she was special. She was the only person who ever told me to slow down. Brad stared at the little cafe like it might disappear. "I haven't been here since the funeral." "I keep meaning to come, but it's scary," Lisa finished gently. "Terrifying," Brad admitted. "What if I walk in there and don't feel anything? What if there's no magic left?" Lisa studied his profile, the way his jaw tensed when he was nervous, how his hands fidgeted with the keys. "There's only one way to find out." Brad took a deep breath and unlocked the door. The bell above it chimed exactly like the one at Brew and Dreams, and suddenly the air was thick with the scent of cinnamon, vanilla, and old wood. "Oh," Lisa breathed. "Oh, wow." The cafe was frozen in time. Checkered tablecloths covered small round tables, mismatched chairs painted in cheerful pastels surrounded each one, and the walls were covered with decades of family photos, customer Polaroids, and handwritten thank you notes. Behind the counter, an ancient espresso machine sat like a bronze monument, and dozens of coffee mugs hung from hooks, each one different, each one clearly loved. "She never threw anything away," Brad said, his voice thick. "Every mug was from someone special. Every photo told a story. She knew everyone's name, everyone's order, everyone's problems. Lisa wandered over to look at the photos. There were pictures of Brad throughout the years, awkward school photos, graduation pictures, but also candid shots of him laughing, covered in flour, holding up what appeared to be a very lumpy cake. "Is this you?" Lisa pointed to a photo of 12-year-old Brad grinning widely, his face covered in chocolate frosting. "First time I tried to make brownies," Brad said, moving to stand beside her. "I used salt instead of sugar. Grandmother Maggie ate the whole pan anyway and told me they were adventurous. You were adorable. I was a disaster." "Some things never change," Lisa teased, then immediately felt bad when Brad's face fell. "Hey, I'm kidding. You've gotten much better at coffee disasters." Brad smiled weakly, then moved to the espresso machine. "This is Bertha's grandmother. Bertha Sr., I guess. Grandmother Maggie called her Duchess." "Duchess?" She said the machine was so elegant and temperamental that she deserved a royal title. Brad ran his hand over the worn brass. "I used to sit right here." He pointed to a small stool behind the counter, and watch Grandmother Maggie work magic. She never measured anything, never timed anything, but every cup was perfect. Lisa could picture it. A small Brad, probably in a tiny apron, watching his grandmother work with the same intense concentration he brought to everything now. "She tried to teach me," Brad continued, "but I was too impatient, too eager to grow up and become important." His voice cracked slightly. "I wish I could tell her I'm sorry for being in such a hurry to leave." "Brad," Lisa started, but he was already moving, opening drawers and cabinets like he was looking for something. "She left me a letter," he explained. "Her lawyer said she left something for me here, but I was too busy with the funeral arrangements to look for it properly." Lisa watched him search, noting how carefully he handled everything, how reverently he treated each item. This wasn't the entitled businessman who'd stormed into her cafe. This was someone trying to reconnect with a part of himself he'd lost. "Here," Brad said suddenly, pulling a yellowed envelope from behind the sugar dispenser. His name was written across it in careful, shaky handwriting. "I can't. Would you read it?" "I don't think I can." Lisa took the letter gently. "Are you sure?" Brad nodded, settling onto his old stool. Lisa opened the envelope carefully and unfolded the single sheet of paper inside. "My dearest Mickey," she began, and Brad's breath caught. "If you're reading this, then I'm gone. And you're probably standing in my kitchen feeling lost and guilty. Stop that immediately. You have nothing to feel guilty about, my love." Lisa glanced up to see tears pooling in Brad's eyes. She continued softly. "I know you think you disappointed me by choosing business over baking, success over simplicity. But Mickey, you never disappointed me. You were exactly who you were supposed to be. Ambitious, brilliant, driven. I was so proud watching you build your empire." "She was proud," Brad whispered. "But I also know that somewhere along the way you forgot the boy who used to steal cookies from my cooling racks and tell me about his dreams. The boy who cried when I told him stories about people who were lonely. The boy who had the biggest heart in the world." Lisa's own voice was getting thick now. "This cafe isn't just a building, Mickey. It's a reminder that success isn't just about money or power. It's about connection. Every person who walked through that door mattered. Every cup of coffee was a chance to make someone's day better. Every conversation was a gift." Brad was crying openly now, but he motioned for Lisa to continue. "I'm not asking you to give up your life and become a barista, but I'm asking you to remember that the most important things in life can't be bought or sold or negotiated. They have to be shared. Find someone who sees the Mickey I remember. Someone who isn't impressed by your money but is impressed by your heart. And when you find that person, don't let your pride or your fear keep you from being happy." Lisa looked up at Brad, whose eyes were fixed on her face. "Use this place however it serves you best, my darling boy. But whatever you do with it, fill it with love. All my love always, Grandmother Maggie. P.S. The secret ingredient in my cinnamon rolls is cardamom. Don't tell anyone." They sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of the letter settling around them like a warm blanket. She knew. Brad said finally. She knew I'd lost myself. She also knew you'd find your way back. Brad looked around the cafe with new eyes. She left me more than a building, she left me a roadmap. What are you going to do with it? Brad was quiet for so long Lisa thought he might not answer. Then he turned to her, and his eyes were clear for the first time since she'd known him. I want to bring it back to life, he said, but I can't do it alone. I don't know how to make people feel welcome. I don't know how to make coffee that tastes like love. I don't know how to be the person my grandmother saw in me. Brad. Lisa, would you help me? Not as a business arrangement or a consulting deal, but as a friend? Would you help me learn to run this place the way Grandmother Maggie would have wanted? Lisa looked around the cafe, at the photos, the mismatched mugs, the ancient espresso machine that probably needed more repairs than replacement. She thought about her own cafe, her own responsibilities, her own carefully planned life. Then she looked at Brad, really looked at him. The vulnerability in his eyes, the hope mixed with fear, the way he was trying so hard to become someone better than he'd been. Yeah, she said quietly. I'll help you. Brad's smile could have powered the entire city. But, Lisa added quickly, I have conditions. Anything. First, we do this right. No cutting corners, no buying your way out of problems, no treating this like a business acquisition. Agreed. Second, you learn everything. How to clean tables, how to take orders, how to handle difficult customers without calling security. Agreed. And third, Lisa paused, suddenly feeling shy. You promised to tell me if you remember any more stories about Grandmother Maggie. I think I would have liked her. She would have loved you, Brad said immediately. She always said the best people were the ones who weren't afraid to speak their minds. Lisa grinned. Then we would have gotten along perfectly. As they prepared to leave, Brad took one last look around the cafe. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For helping me come home. 2 weeks later, Maggie's kitchen was buzzing with activity. Brad had thrown himself into the restoration with the same intensity he brought to hostile takeovers, except now he was researching vintage coffee equipment instead of stock portfolios. Lisa, look! Brad called excitedly from behind the counter where he was polishing Duchess for the third time that morning. I got her working. Listen to that purr. The ancient espresso machine made a sound like a dragon with bronchitis, but Brad looked so proud that Lisa didn't have the heart to point out that purring wasn't typically associated with mechanical wheezing. Sounds robust, Lisa said diplomatically, carrying in a tray of fresh pastries from her cafe. How's the soft opening prep going? Everything's perfect. Brad gestured around the cafe, which did look amazing. He'd managed to restore the vintage charm while adding modern touches that Grandmother Maggie would have approved of. Tables polished, menu finalized, supplies stocked. What could go wrong? Lisa had learned that when Brad asked, what could go wrong, the universe took it as a personal challenge. Brad, she said carefully, remember what we practiced about customer service? Smile, listen, make everyone feel welcome, and don't mention my net worth unprompted, Brad recited dutifully. And if someone complains? Apologize sincerely and fix the problem without explaining why they're wrong. Good. And if someone can't afford their order? Offer them something on the house and make them feel valued, not pitied. Lisa nodded approvingly. You've come a long way from the guy who called me you people. I was a different person then, Brad said quietly. A worse person. Before Lisa could respond, the door chimed, and their first customer walked in. Mrs. Rodriguez from down the street, who looked exactly like the type of neighborhood regular Grandmother Maggie would have adored. Oh my goodness, Mrs. Rodriguez gasped, looking around. It's just like I remembered. Maggie would be so happy. Brad practically glowed. You knew my grandmother? Knew her? Honey, she saved my marriage. I used to come here every Tuesday when my husband and I were fighting, and she'd listen to me complain while making me her famous cinnamon rolls. One day she told me to bring him with me instead of just complaining about him. Did it work? Lisa asked. 35 years later, we still come for coffee every Tuesday. Mrs. Rodriguez smiled sadly. We miss this place so much. Well, you're our first official customer, Brad said, moving behind the counter with newfound confidence. What can I make for you? Just a simple coffee, honey, black, 1 sugar. Brad nodded seriously and turned to Duchess. Lisa watched nervously as he went through the process they'd practiced, measuring carefully, checking the temperature. For once, everything seemed to be going perfectly. Then the door exploded open. Bradley Wellington. A tall, sharp-faced woman in an expensive suit strode in like she owned the place. Lisa recognized the type immediately. Corporate shark in designer clothing. Brad went white. Victoria. Don't you Victoria me. The woman, Victoria, planted herself in front of the counter. Do you have any idea what you've done? The Tokyo deal fell through. Henderson Industries pulled out. The board is calling an emergency meeting. Victoria, I'm with a customer. A customer? A customer? Victoria looked around the cafe like it was contaminated. Bradley, you've lost your mind. Playing house in this quaint little hovel while your empire crumbles. Lisa felt something cold settle in her stomach. Empire? This isn't playing house, Brad said firmly. This is important to me. Important? Bradley, you're the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. You don't have time for important. You have stockholders, responsibilities, a reputation to maintain. Multi-billion-dollar corporation. Lisa's mind went numb. Brad wasn't just rich, he was mega rich. Fortune 500 rich. Could buy her entire neighborhood rich. Victoria, please. No, I've indulged this little midlife crisis long enough. The board meeting is in 2 hours. You're coming with me right now to do damage control, and then we're selling this place and pretending this never happened. I'm not selling Grandmother Maggie's cafe, Brad said quietly. Yes, you are. Because if you don't, the board will vote you out, and someone else will make the decision for you. Lisa watched Brad's face change. The confidence drained away, replaced by the same corporate mask she'd seen that first day. The transformation was immediate and heartbreaking. I need to think. There's nothing to think about, Bradley. This is business. This is your life. You can't throw it all away for... Victoria's eyes landed on Lisa, and her expression turned predatory. Oh, I see. You're throwing it away for her. Leave Lisa out of this, Brad said sharply. Lisa, is it? Victoria smiled like a barracuda. How much? Excuse me? Lisa found her voice. How much is he paying you? Because whatever it is, I'll double it to walk away right now. The cafe went deadly silent. Even Mrs. Rodriguez stopped stirring her coffee. You think he's paying me? Lisa's voice was dangerously quiet. Oh, sweetie. Victoria's tone was patronizing poison. Men like Bradley don't slum it in places like this for free. There's always a transaction, so what is it? He's funding your little coffee shop? Paying your rent? Or are you holding out for something bigger? Lisa felt like she'd been slapped. All the moments she'd treasured, Brad's vulnerability, his stories about his grandmother, his genuine laughter, suddenly felt tainted. Had it all been an act? Lisa, don't listen to her, Brad pleaded. She doesn't understand. Understand what? Lisa turned on him, her green eyes blazing. That you're CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation and you forgot to mention it? That you've been playing dress-up as a normal person while I've been here like an idiot, thinking you actually cared about this place? I do care. I care more about this place than anything. Do you? Lisa's voice cracked. Because it sounds like when push comes to shove, you're going to choose your empire over Grandmother Maggie's cafe, just like you chose it over everything else. That's not fair. Fair? Lisa laughed bitterly. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been telling me the truth from the beginning. Fair would have been trusting me enough to know that I cared about you, not your money. I was going to tell you. When? After I fell in love with a person who doesn't actually exist? The words hung in the air like a bomb. Lisa's hand flew to her mouth, realizing what she'd just admitted. Brad stared at her, his face a mixture of hope and desperation. Lisa. No. Lisa backed away, grabbing her jacket. I can't do this. I can't be another acquisition in your portfolio, Brad, or Bradley, or whoever you actually are. Lisa, please. But she was already gone, the door slamming behind her hard enough to make all the pictures on the wall rattle. Victoria clapped slowly. Well done, Bradley. Very entertaining. Now can we please get back to reality? Brad looked at the door, then at Victoria, then at Mrs. Rodriguez, who was watching the whole scene with the horrified fascination of someone witnessing a car crash. Get out, he said quietly. Excuse me? I said get out. Take your meeting, take your board, take your empire. I don't care anymore. Bradley, you're being emotional. Get out, Brad roared, and for the first time in years, Victoria actually looked scared. She gathered her purse with wounded dignity. Fine, but when you come crawling back, and you will, remember that you chose this. After she left, the cafe fell silent except for the wheeze of Duchess and the quiet sobs coming from behind the counter. Mrs. Rodriguez stood up slowly, left exact change on the table and paused by the counter. For what it's worth, honey, she said gently. Your grandmother would have been proud of you for standing up to that woman, but she would have been even prouder if you'd run after the girl. And with that wisdom, she left Brad alone with his empire, his inheritance, and the devastating realization that he'd just lost the only thing that had made him feel human in years. 3 days later, Brad sat in the boardroom of Blackwood Enterprises, wearing his lucky suit, now cleaned of coffee stains, and staring at 24 of the most powerful people in corporate America. They were discussing his future like he wasn't even there. The Tokyo fiasco has cost us $300 million in potential revenue, Victoria announced, clicking through a presentation. Henderson Industries is reconsidering all partnerships. Our stock is down 12%. This cafe obsession has been a distraction, added board member Harrison. We need focused leadership. I agree, said another voice. Bradley's recent behavior has been erratic. Brad barely listened. His mind kept replaying the look in Lisa's eyes when she'd realized who he really was. The devastation, the betrayal, the way she'd said, fell in love with a person who doesn't actually exist. But he did exist. Mickey existed, the man who polished Duchess until she gleamed, who learned to make coffee from scratch, who found peace in the smell of cinnamon and vanilla. That man was real. Maybe more real than the person sitting in this sterile conference room. Bradley? Victoria's sharp voice cut through his thoughts. The board is waiting for your response. My response to what? To the ultimatum. Sell the cafe, refocus on business, and retain your position as CEO, or continue this midlife crisis and face a vote of no confidence. Brad looked around the table. These people had been his world for 15 years. They'd celebrated his victories, strategized his expansion, built an empire together. But looking at them now, he couldn't remember a single conversation that wasn't about money, power, or market share. When was the last time any of them had asked how he was feeling? When was the last time he'd genuinely laughed in this room? I need to make a call, Brad said, standing up. Bradley, we're in the middle of 5 minutes. He walked out, ignoring Victoria's protests, and found himself in his office. The wall of windows overlooked the city, and somewhere out there was a small cafe where a blonde woman was probably making perfect coffee and trying to forget he existed. Brad pulled out his phone and dialed a number he'd memorized but never called. Brew and Dreams, this is Jenny. Is Lisa there? Who's asking? Brad Wellington. There was a pause. She doesn't want to talk to you. I know, but I need to tell her something, just... Can you tell her I'm about to do something really stupid? And if she cares even a little bit, she should turn on Channel 7 News in 10 minutes? That's cryptic and weird. Please. Another pause. Fine. But if this is some grand romantic gesture that makes her cry, I'm personally coming to kick your ass. Understood. Brad hung up and walked back into the boardroom. 24 faces turned to him expectantly. I've made my decision, he announced. Victoria smiled triumphantly. Excellent. I knew you'd come to your senses. I resign. The room erupted, Victoria shot to her feet. You what? I resign as CEO, effective immediately. I'm selling my shares in the company and stepping down from the board. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious in my life. Brad looked around the table one more time. This company will be fine without me. Better, probably. You'll find someone who wants to live in this world 24/7. Someone who thinks quarterly profits are more important than quarterly hugs. Quarterly hugs? Harrison looked horrified. From my grandmother. She used to hug me every 3 months when I visited. I thought I was too busy for monthly hugs, too important for weekly hugs. Turns out I wasn't too important. I was just too stupid. The room was dead silent. Victoria, you'll make an excellent CEO. You want this more than I ever did. Brad headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and I'm keeping the cafe. Try to take it from me and I'll use every penny from my share sale to bury you in legal paperwork. That's not a threat. It's a promise. 15 minutes later, Brad stood outside the Channel 7 news station, still in his suit, looking directly into the camera. My name is Bradley Wellington, and 3 weeks ago I was the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Today I'm unemployed. The reporter looked thrilled. This was better than anything they'd planned for the evening news. What happened, Mr. Wellington? I fell in love, Brad said simply, with a woman who taught me that being rich isn't the same as being wealthy, that making money isn't the same as making a difference, that building an empire isn't the same as building a home. And where is this woman now? Probably watching this and thinking I'm an idiot. Brad looked directly into the camera. Lisa, if you're watching, you're right. I am an idiot. I should have told you who I was from the beginning. I should have trusted you. I should have run after you instead of letting you walk away. The reporter was practically vibrating with excitement. What are you going to do now? I'm going to reopen my grandmother's cafe. I'm going to learn to make coffee that tastes like love. I'm going to know every customer's name and their problems and their dreams. And I'm going to try to become the man my grandmother thought I could be. And if this Lisa doesn't forgive you, Brad smiled sadly, then I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the love she showed me, even if I never get the chance to earn it back. Meanwhile, across town at Brew and Dreams, every customer and employee was crowded around the small TV in the corner. Lisa stood frozen behind the counter, coffee pot in hand, staring at the screen. Well, Jenny said finally, that was definitely stupid. Incredibly stupid, agreed Mrs. Henderson. The stupidest thing I've ever seen, added Tom, the morning regular. Lisa's eyes filled with tears. The stupidest. You gonna go to him? Jenny asked gently. Lisa set down the coffee pot with shaking hands. I don't know. How do I know this isn't just another performance, another way to get what he wants? Because, Mrs. Henderson said wisely, men like that don't give up billion-dollar companies for performances. They give them up for love. On screen, the interview was ending. Brad looked tired but determined, like a man who'd finally figured out what really mattered. Besides, Jenny added, you love him. You said so yourself. I love Mickey, Lisa corrected. The man who wore pink aprons and brought thermometers to coffee shops and talked about his grandmother. I don't know if that man and Bradley Wellington can exist in the same person. Only one way to find out, Tom said. Lisa looked around at the faces of her customers, people who'd become family, people who cared about her happiness. If I go, and this all blows up in my face, then you come back here and we'll help you put the pieces back together, Jenny said firmly. That's what family does. Lisa untied her apron, grabbed her keys, and headed for the door. If anyone asks, I've gone to find out if fairy tales can exist in Brooklyn. 20 minutes later, Lisa pushed open the door to Maggie's kitchen to find Brad sitting at one of the small tables, still in his suit, staring at his hands. So, she said quietly. Unemployed, huh? Brad's head snapped up, hope and terror warring in his eyes. Lisa, that was quite a show on TV. It wasn't a show. Brad stood slowly. It was the truth. Finally. Lisa walked closer, noting that he looked exhausted. You gave up everything. No, Brad said softly. I gave up everything that didn't matter to find the one thing that does. And what's that? You. This place. The person I am when I'm with you. He took a tentative step toward her. Lisa, I know I should have told you who I was. I know I let you down. But everything I felt, everything we shared, that was real. Mickey is real. He's who I am when I'm not trying to be anyone else. Lisa studied his face, looking for any trace of the corporate mask. All she saw was the man who'd worn pink aprons and cried over his grandmother's letter. Prove it, she said. How? Make me coffee. Not with thermometers or perfect measurements. Make me coffee the way Grandmother Maggie would have wanted. Brad nodded, moving behind the counter. He approached Duchess, who wheezed encouragingly, and began to work. No measuring, no timing, just muscle memory and intuition. Lisa watched as his movements became sure and practiced as the stress melted from his shoulders. When he finished, he handed her a perfect cup of coffee. She took a sip, and her eyes widened. It tastes like home, Brad finished. Grandmother Maggie's recipe. I finally remembered. Lisa set down the cup and looked at him. Really looked at him. I was so scared, she whispered. Of what? That you weren't real. That I'd imagined the man I fell in love with. I'm real, Brad said, reaching out to touch her face gently. I'm more real with you than I've ever been with anyone. Even if it means being broke? Brad laughed. I'm not broke. I'm rich in all the ways that actually matter. Such as? I have this cafe. I have Duchess. I have the best coffee teacher in New York. He paused. And if I'm very, very lucky, I might have a chance to earn back the love of an extraordinary woman who sees past all my flaws to the person I want to be. Lisa smiled through her tears. You might. Yeah? Yeah, but I have conditions. Anything. First, no more lies. No more secrets. If you're having a bad day, if you miss your old life, if you're scared, you tell me. Deal. Second, you let me help you run this place. As an equal partner, not as your employee or your charity case. Deal. Though I think you'll be doing most of the helping. And third, Lisa stepped closer. You promise me that no matter how successful this place becomes, you'll never forget that the most important ingredient in any recipe is love. I promise, Brad whispered, leaning down until their foreheads touched. I love you, Lisa Morgan. I love you too, Mickey Wellington. And in the little cafe that smelled like cinnamon and dreams, they kissed for the first time, while Duchess wheezed approvingly in the background. The line outside Maggie's kitchen stretched around the block, but nobody seemed to mind waiting. Street musicians played near the corner. A food truck had set up across the street to catch the overflow, and the whole neighborhood buzzed with the kind of energy that comes from a place everyone wants to be. Inside, Brad Wellington, now permanently in jeans and a Maggie's Kitchen t-shirt, was behind the counter with flour in his hair and a grin that hadn't faded in 6 months. He'd just finished telling Mr. Peterson about his grandson's soccer game while making what had become known as Mickey's Special, a latte that somehow tasted like childhood memories. Order up, Lisa called from behind the espresso machine, sliding 3 perfect cappuccinos across the counter. Her blonde hair was braided back with a pencil stuck through it, and she wore an apron that read, Boss Lady in elegant script, a gift from Brad after their first month as official partners. Lisa, Table 4 is asking about the story behind the cinnamon rolls again, called Jenny, who'd left Bruin Dreams to become their head baker when the workload got too crazy. Tell them it's a family secret passed down through generations of stubborn women who believed sugar could fix anything, Lisa replied without missing a beat. That's not the real story, Brad protested, wiping down the counter. The real story is boring. The customer story is better. The real story is that my grandmother spent 3 years perfecting that recipe because she wanted to create something that would make sad people smile, Brad said, then paused. Okay, the customer story is better. Mrs. Rodriguez, now a daily regular who had claimed the corner table as her own, looked up from her newspaper. "Bradley, honey, you've got that look again." "What look?" "The, I'm about to do something that will make Lisa either kiss you or kill you look." Lisa glanced over, suspicious. "What are you planning now?" Before Brad could answer, the door chimed and Victoria walked in. The entire cafe went quiet. Victoria had become something of a local legend, the corporate shark who'd tried to destroy their fairy tale. "Well, well," Victoria said, looking around. "The infamous Maggie's kitchen." "Victoria," Brad said carefully, "how's the CEO job treating you?" "Wonderfully, actually. Stock's up 18% since you left." She paused. "Thank you." "For what?" "For being smart enough to know what you didn't want. The board was right. I am better at this than you were." Lisa appeared at Brad's side, ready for battle if necessary. Victoria noticed the protective stance and smiled. "Relax, dear. I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here because—" She hesitated, looking uncharacteristically vulnerable. "Because I wanted to see what was worth giving up $1 billion empire for." She looked around the cafe, at the mismatched chairs painted in cheerful colors, the walls covered with customer photos and thank you notes, the way every person in the room seemed to genuinely belong there. "And?" Lisa asked. "I think I understand." Victoria's voice was softer than anyone had ever heard it. "You didn't just open a cafe. You created a home." Brad nodded. Grandmother Maggie always said that's what she was really serving. Home, one cup at a time. "Well," Victoria said briskly, returning to her normal demeanor, "I can't stay long. I have a merger to finalize. But I wanted to give you this." She handed Brad an envelope. He opened it cautiously and pulled out a check. "Victoria, what is this?" "Your share from the Henderson deal. It went through last month. Consider it a very expensive wedding gift." "Wedding gift?" Lisa's voice went up an octave. "What wedding gift?" Victoria smirked. "Oh, you haven't asked her yet? How delightfully old-fashioned of you, Bradley." And with that bombshell, she swept out of the cafe, leaving chaos in her wake. Lisa turned to Brad, hands on her hips. "Haven't asked me what yet?" The entire cafe was staring. Conversations had stopped mid-sentence. Even Duchess seemed to be listening. Brad looked around at their audience, then at Lisa's expectant face, and made a decision that would have terrified CEO Bradley but felt perfectly natural to Mickey. "I was going to do this differently," he said, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. "I had a whole plan. Romantic dinner, perfect speech, better timing." "Brad," Lisa whispered. "But this is better, isn't it? Here, with all our friends, in the place where we found each other." He dropped to one knee right there behind the counter, and the entire cafe erupted in gasps and excited whispers. "Lisa Morgan, 6 months ago you threw coffee at me for being an arrogant idiot." "You were an arrogant idiot," Lisa said, tears already starting. "I was. But you saw something in me that I didn't even know existed. You taught me that success isn't about what you accumulate. It's about what you share. You showed me that love isn't something you buy or negotiate. It's something you earn every single day." Mrs. Rodriguez was openly crying now. Someone had started recording with their phone. "You made me want to be the man my grandmother saw in me. You made me remember what home feels like. And every day I get to work beside you is a day I remember how lucky I am." Brad opened the box, revealing a simple, elegant ring. "So, Lisa Morgan, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life learning to deserve the love you've given me?" Lisa looked down at him, this man who'd given up everything to become himself, who wore pink aprons without shame, who knew every customer's story and never forgot to ask about their families. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, you ridiculous, wonderful man, yes." The cafe exploded in cheers. Brad slipped the ring onto her finger and stood up to kiss her, and everyone started clapping and whistling. Duchess wheezed what sounded suspiciously like approval. "Speech, speech," someone called out. Brad and Lisa looked at each other and laughed. "Okay," Lisa said, standing on a chair so everyone could see her. 6 months ago, this arrogant businessman stormed into my cafe and ruined my morning. Hey, Brad protested. Best morning of my life, Lisa continued, grinning, because sometimes the best things come from the worst disasters. Sometimes the people who annoy you most are the ones who change your life. And sometimes, she looked down at Brad, her heart full to bursting. Sometimes you find your home in the last place you expected to look. To Maggie's kitchen, Mrs. Rodriguez called out, raising her coffee cup. To Grandmother Maggie, added Mr. Peterson. To love, shouted Jenny. To really good coffee, called out a customer from the back, making everyone laugh. As the celebration continued around them, Brad pulled Lisa close. Any regrets? He whispered in her ear. About what? About falling in love with an unemployed former CEO who makes terrible coffee? Lisa laughed. First of all, your coffee has gotten much better. Second, you're not unemployed, you're self-employed. And third, she kissed him softly. I didn't fall in love with a CEO or a barista. I fell in love with Mickey, the man who cries at letters from his grandmother and wears pink aprons and thinks cinnamon rolls can heal the world. Can they? Look around, Lisa said, gesturing at their cafe full of friends, neighbors, and chosen family. What do you think? Brad looked around at the life they'd built together. Messy, imperfect, and absolutely perfect. I think Grandmother Maggie was right about everything. Everything? Well, almost everything. She said the secret ingredient was cardamom. And? Brad grinned and pulled Lisa closer. Turns out it's love after all. As the sun set over Brooklyn, casting golden light through the windows of Maggie's kitchen, Brad and Lisa danced behind the counter to music from someone's phone, while their customers cheered and Duchess wheezed out what everyone agreed was definitely the wedding march. And if you happened to walk by that little cafe on any given day after that, you'd see exactly what Grandmother Maggie had always known. That the best kind of wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in moments like these, in love shared one cup at a time, in the kind of home that exists not in buildings but in hearts. The end.